everyone, and welcome to another edition of Unplugged, our Christmas edition, final edition for 2019. It's been terrific to have your company over the course of the year thus far. We've had a lot of fun putting it together. There's been drama, there's unfortunately been tragedy over the course of the season, but at the same time, as we look towards 2020, hopefully it is done so with much optimism at this time of year. Darren Parkin is my name, Nick Splitter and Aaron McGrath joining me as they do every single week. The three of us have really enjoyed putting this together for you, and we hope you've had a lot of fun as well. Good to see those Unplugged stickers floating around too. If you want to get in contact with us, unplugged@gmail.com. You can tweet us at Unplugged, facebook.com/Unplugged. Check us out on all of the channels as well. I'll get Nick to verify that I've done all of those socials correctly when we introduce him very shortly. Bumper show. We'll jump inside the Saints recruiting team with Chris Toce very shortly to have a chat about how they spot talent and how all of that process works. Jamie Cox will join us to discuss the growth in the AFL women's program at the Saints, and a club legend, a premiership player. Unfortunately, we can't say that about too many, which is, I guess, a source of frustration for a lot of us, but a St Kilda premiership star in Barry Breen will join us a little bit later on in the program as well. But boys, nice to have you with us on the eve of Christmas. Nick, starting off with you. As I said, I hope I've got those socials correct, but welcome.
No, sounds about right. I think if anyone, if you're interested, just Google Unplugged. You'll find it all. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, on Insta.
Spotify, Apple, all of those. Just
pretty much any of the major podcast platforms. Just Google. Google's your friend.
Yep.
Type it in, you'll find us.
And H, nice to have you with us as well as we gear up for Christmas. I know I've seen a couple of your young'uns recently decked out in some St Kilda gear. I'm sure there's some people who are going to get some St Kilda gear under the tree over the next week or so.
Yeah, they've picked up their memberships and ready to go for next year. And my 3-year-old got a card and it says she's been a member for 5 years now. So that's the numbers.
That's impressive.
So the numbers work out well there. But yeah, it's last one for the year and go off, have a little bit of a break, come back, go have a look at the women, get into that. Then, before we know it, I'm sure the season will be here.
That's right. I think, obviously, it's Feb 9 for the AFLW girls against the Bulldogs. And we've got the practice match, I think, on the 14th or the 15th. I think it might be the 15th, where we play Hawthorn. And there may even be something sort of women's football related in regards to the VFL side as well on that day. But certainly, Moorabbin will take centre stage in a while. But I guess the lasting memory of 2019 for each of you from a St Kilda point of view?
Well, I did actually travel up to Townsville for the game earlier mid-season. We were sort of sitting there in the sun, getting a bit burnt, and
looked like a train wreck for a while.
Half time, going, why did we bother?
Yeah.
But then it's fight back and get the win up there, and made the trip nice and worthwhile, and actually enjoyed the holiday.
And Nick, for you?
Yeah, look, there's a couple. It was obviously a bit of an improvement on the last couple of years, but also some moments that obviously were tragic and heartbreaking. I think, it's hard to go past the passing of Danny Frawley as kind of the moment of the year for St Kilda supporters. So many stories told over the weeks following. I don't think we need to go there again, but that was obviously a really big moment for all St Kilda supporters and all AFL fans during the year. But for on field, I think we had a couple of really good wins. It's always good to beat Melbourne. We did that twice,
and Essendon.
Yeah. We beat Hawthorn too.
Yep.
So to get a couple of wins against some of those kind of rivals, old and new, was nice.
Absolutely.
And it was almost one of those seasons where we could say, well, what's happened after the season could almost be better than what the season itself held. So
that's right. I mean, all of with Dougal Howard and obviously Bradley Hill and Zach Jones and Dan Butler and Paddy Ryder obviously coming across to the club, and Ryan Byrnes, our earliest pick, and which was at 52 or thereabouts in the draft. So we will have a chat to Chris about all of that very shortly. But if you had to pick one win, for me, it's always Essendon. I love sort of beating Melbourne as well, but the Essendon win for me in round 2, it was one that certainly I think gave the whole club a bit of confidence. That the Gold Coast win in round 1 was ugly, I guess, to say the least.
Not a bad win at that point, though.
No, that's right.
Back it up after that.
That's right. But I guess we didn't know at the time that they'd put a good month together. But to beat Essendon in round 2 was particularly pleasing.
I think also that they'd put out a lot of noise in the off season. They'd picked up Dylan Shield and they were going all out on a flag according to the Essendon membership base, and to get a win over them early was nice, and that's always fun to beat them. But I think for me it's beating Melbourne. Anytime we beat Melbourne, had the wood on them for the last decade, and they came around and beat us once or twice in the last year or two. So to beat them, to get back on the board 2-0 on that record this year was nice. And I've got a couple of Melbourne supporting friends and family that it's always nice.
Yeah, probably. I reckon Hawthorn probably was that right up there. We know a few Hawks fans that were quite happy to tell to settle down a little bit.
The Saints will win another tight one. 3 from 3 at Marvel and 3-1 for the season.
And even though we should have beaten Fremantle and did, that the manner of that victory was exciting. The goals late in the piece was... So there were plenty of highlights over the course of the year, as we said, plenty of lowlights as well. And just before we welcome our first guest, of the signings, which one excites you most?
For me, it has to be Brad Hill.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy is an absolute superstar. You see what he's done in his career over the last decade. He's a 3-time premiership player. He's best and fairest.
Yeah,
I think he's maybe.
He definitely won one at Freo. He may have won one at Hawthorn as well.
I reckon he's won one or two. He's a superstar. He's exactly the type of player that we need. Smooth mover. He's quick across the ground. He'll love playing it at Marvel Stadium. He suits us down to a T.
Yeah. And going away from him being the obvious one, I do really think Zach Jones could fit in really well. He's still got age on his side. He's probably coming to the peak of his career. So we've got him in at a good time. And if he just, that little bit of problem with his disposal, if he can fix that up.
Yeah, just runs too quick sometimes. He
basically just doesn't steady on that last 2 steps. But if he fixes that up, he's going to be very, very good for us.
It's not something that we've said about St Kilda players
that's
for a while.
right.
Someone runs too quick.
Yeah, that's right. But he does have that sometimes. He just needs to take that steadying step. But we have been lucky on our last show to catch up with Steve Lennie and jump inside the inner sanctum. We're going to do that again today.
It was amazing. It's with family at home. Long nervous wait, really long night. And I'm just stoked. Couldn't be more wrapped. It's a really ideal situation. I can't wait to get stuck into it with the boys.
The voice you heard there was Ryan Byrnes, taken by the Saints with their first pick. Had to wait a little while, deep into the second night of the draft, but fantastic to have him on board, and fantastic to have our next guest with us as well. Chris Toce joining us from the St Kilda Recruiting Department to give us an insight into how the process all works. He's the regional manager for Victoria and the Allies, keeping an eye on all of the kids ahead of the draft. Chris, thanks for popping in and joining us for our podcast this week.
No, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Mentioned at the start there that the draft haul, unfortunately for the Saints, was decimated. I guess at the start of the year, you'd sit down and think, we might have picks 4, 8, 17 and 25 to deal with, and I can look at some of the absolute top end of town, but I guess when you get a trade haul like the Saints did, it leaves the barrel a little thin. Yeah,
it certainly did. James Gallagher left us with a pretty ordinary draft hand in the end, but I think, as a holistic look at the draft and the trade period, I mean, as recruiters, we were absolutely thrilled with the draft haul the trade haul that Gags was able to facilitate. And yeah, I think in the end we only had the 3 picks at the draft, but we're really happy with how it went. And I think the thing that's most pleasing is that you look at our list this year compared to this time last year, and I think we're positioned in a much better way, so that's really exciting.
Thanks for joining us, Chris. Now, the makeup of the recruiting team, what's the levels that work, and who recruits, who responds to who's in charge, makes the top decisions? What's the breakdown of it all?
Yeah, we're actually a pretty small group, so I'd say probably average in terms of staff, looking at it from a holistic sort of AFL point of view. We've got Chris Liberatore, who's the National Recruiting Manager, so he oversees the recruiting department. Then there's myself. I manage Victoria and the Allies states, so that's sort of Tassie, New South Wales, ACT, Queensland and NT. It sounds like a lot, but it's not that hard. And then we've got Simon Guest as well, who looks after South Australia and Western Australia. And then obviously then there's James Gallagher, who really is the head of the list management and recruiting department. And then you've got Steve Lennie, who you guys spoke to last time, who just focuses on the pro scouting aspect. So Yeah, even though, we have sort of specific areas to manage, as a recruiting team, being myself, Libba and Guesty, we really share all the duties in terms of watching the talent across Australia. So even though I manage Victoria, I'll see just as much footy in South Australia and Western Australia as the other guys.
Chris, what is... obviously you go to a lot of games, you see a lot of games live, and you watch the tape. What is kind of your Monday to Friday, kind of normal work week entail?
Yeah, everyone's always fascinated by that. Obviously, the weekends are pretty self-explanatory, but on a Monday, there's every chance on a weekend that at least two of us in the recruiting team have travelled that weekend. So we try to work from home on a Monday, knock off our reports. So obviously we need to be reporting on the players that we've watched on the weekend. So that can take half a day or almost a full day, depending on how many players you're reporting on. And then we sort of use that day as well to, I guess, follow up with the NAB League clubs or state league level clubs. If someone got injured on the weekend, we might want to get a little update on how they're going and that sort of stuff. On a Tuesday, we're all in the office. We get together as a list management or as a list and recruiting group with Gags and Steve Lennie involved as well, and we just have a little chat about what we saw on the weekend and who are the movers and shakers and who's rising up the board and maybe who's going the other way as well. And we'll also sort of sit down and maybe have a little look at what the next weekend looks like in terms of where we're going to head. The rest of Tuesday is basically just watching vision. So we're really lucky that Champion Data, they code all the vision for us. So we've got everything available to us almost, either Monday afternoon or definitely by Tuesday. So we'll spend the rest of the day watching vision. Wednesday we have a day off, which is great. Although being in such a job, being in a job like this that you really love, you do end up probably opening up the laptop for a while and watching a bit more vision. Thursday again is just more vision. There's just so many players to watch across Australia, and you can't be at everything on the weekend. So we'll usually spend a lot of Thursday watching vision as well, and then Friday is usually either a travelling day if you're going to Perth or South Australia, or during I guess the middle of the year we have school footy here as well, and they tend to play some of their games on a Friday afternoon. So we'll get out to some of those too.
So you mentioned that you can't kind of get out to all the games, which makes sense because there's hundreds of games across the country kind of every weekend. But who decides and how do you decide which games that you're going to go to and which players you're specifically going to watch on a given day? Yeah,
so we sort of start the year with a really large follow list. So we'll have a working document with every league, so NAB League, Sandful, Waffle, etc., and all the players that are of interest to us. And we've sort of gathered that data, having watched these guys probably from under 16s onwards, so we sort of know who's who. And we also spend some time in the pre-season going to meet with all these clubs. So we'll literally go and meet every Sandful, Waffle and NAB League club to get the lay of the land and I guess get their impression on who are the players that we should be watching. So then from there, when we're actually deciding the games on the weekend, we just sort of sit down and prioritise the games, I guess, where the most talent is. But we're also trying to balance the load and the travel on all of us as well. So we sort of basically rotate between Victoria, South Australia, Western Australia. And we're really lucky that we've got a really dedicated network of part-time scouts as well. So obviously between the three of us, we can really only get to about 6 games a weekend maximum. So we utilise our network of part-time scouts to get to the games that we can't be at as well. So, they're really the unsung heroes of recruiting because, they do a lot of work for not a lot of monetary reward, and they're doing it for either the love of the game or love of the club, or striving to be a full-time recruiter themselves, which is sort of how I got into it.
Now, when we spoke to Steve, he spoke about almost scouting opposition players and building those reports on sort of how all that works. From your point of view, I guess tying that in together, if St Kilda haven't drafted a particular player and then 3 to 4 years later they're potentially on the market or they're thrown up for a trade or the club's looking at them, is it something where they go back to initial reports from you guys and say, what was your draft impression? Has it turned out the way you thought it would with this player at AFL level? What do you think we need to do? Is it worthwhile? Does it sort of come back to that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We build profiles on all these guys when they're 18. And as I said, that can start from when they're 16 years of age. So there's a hell of a lot of information and reports, match reports, psych reports, medical testing, stuff on their character as well. Steve will definitely touch base with us and get our impressions, and maybe even ask us where they played as a junior, because quite often they come into the system and they might end up playing somewhere else, and we might really have liked a guy as a midfielder, and now he's playing half back and not getting an opportunity in the midfield. So Steve can then use that information, to help him target guys at the AFL level.
I know it's going off on a tangent a little bit, but you did mention then the psychological profile and things like that. I read about some of the Gold Coast players and some of the questions they were asked. Things like if a train was going to kill a worker on the track and you could divert it down a path, but it might run over these kids or something. What are you doing? Can you shed any light on why they would ask questions like that, and what you could possibly get out of how they'd answer that?
No, it's a question that gets asked a lot. I mean, we're pretty straight up and down, the Saints.
Yeah.
We tend to go more line and length than that, but each to their own, I suppose. I can only imagine that they're doing it to see how they react under pressure.
Yeah.
Quite often what happens by the end of the year in particular, all these players that are at the combine or highly touted draftee or potential draftees, they've got player managers. They've been coached up a lot in terms of how to respond to questions in interviews, and they're usually pretty polished by the end of the year. So it can be a good idea to get them at the start of the year. So I think it would just be to see how they react to a bit of a tricky question. We tend to be a bit more straight up and down.
Now, following on from that, you tend to go out to some of the families and players in the areas out in the country or even local in the city. You get to know them quite well, get to know the families, where they come from and all that sort of thing. But if it came down to it, would you be more looking at picking a player that fills a position or picking the player that fits into the club? Which would be the priority?
Yeah, to be honest, you're always striving for perfection, so you're looking for a bit of both. We do a hell of a lot of work in terms of speaking to families, but not just families, but then doing a lot of reference checking in terms of speaking to their club, their school, all that sort of stuff. It's a hard one. I mean, we would never draft a player unless we've been in their home and met their family. So we need to have a good feel from the player based on that character assessment. But also taking into account that not everyone's perfect, and people have different upbringings, and you have to be really mindful of that. And then in terms of the positional needs and fits like that, that's really more of a list management discussion. You're always just trying to pick good players at the draft. You don't want to force things too much. If there's a really talented player sitting there, but he's not necessarily a need, but he's 10 spots higher than the player you need on your board, then I think you go with the talent.
Yep.
And just try and make it work.
How much of a role does analytics play in youth recruitment, and does it play as much of a part as when you're looking at kind of professional players to bring into the club, or is it more about kind of the eye test and what they look like when they're playing against kids their own age?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it has more relevance, analytics, at the next level, at AFL level. Mainly because we're not getting the same stats that you get at AFL level. We're getting a very much a dumbed down version of what you can access at AFL level. So it's hard to quantify some things. But where we've sort of used it this year, without giving too much away, is I guess looking at some players that have been successful at AFL level, having a look at what they look like as juniors, and then I guess trying to draw some comparisons or parallels with some guys that are currently in the draft pool, and it can throw up some really interesting results. So they might throw up a player that you haven't necessarily been drawn to with your eye, but that's a really good thing, because then it's like, okay, well then let's go and watch this guy for a month. The numbers are telling us that he's tracking similarly to a Patrick Cripps or someone like that at a junior level. So, maybe we're missing something. It's just a really good tool to have, I guess, on your side to check yourself. But yeah, it's dangerous in recruiting. You don't want to base your decisions on any one thing. You've got to use all the tools and all the information you've got at hand to make the best possible decision.
Now we often hear the word steal, so I guess a two-part question. I guess your thoughts on Ryan Byrnes, who a lot of people tip would have gone a bit earlier than he did for us, and I guess the second part of that question, when it comes down to a situation with Biggie Newen, who's been at the club for a couple of years, Richmond put a bid in, St Kilda decides not to match. How much do they lean on even your guys' research about, well, who could we get in the draft? Where did you have this kid? Sort of how does that work out?
Yeah, well, I'll start with Ryan. Ryan, we were thrilled. Every recruiter says that, don't they? But we really were. We were thrilled to get Ryan. We rated him pretty highly. So we rated him a lot higher than where we ended up picking him in the draft. Our intel leading into the draft suggested to us that there was probably one club picking just before us that were likely to take him. It just so happened that another player slid through to them that they preferred to Ryan, and that pushed Ryan out to us. So if you had have asked us on the day of the draft, not that we would have told you at that point, but Ryan was the one that we thought, he's the one probably rated high-ish on our board that might get through to us. So we were really pleased. He had a very consistent year. He was captain of Sandringham and won their best and fairest. And we really went into the draft wanting to pick another midfielder. We felt like our group or our list as it stands, we could really use with some more young mids coming through. So that was a bit of a non-negotiable for us. We were always going to pick a midfielder if one was there. And in terms of Biggie, it's a bit of a bittersweet one with Biggie because the club did some amazing work with him. I think Biggie would be the first to tell you that he leaves St Kilda Footy Club as a better footballer and a better person. He's a great young man, really popular. Unfortunately, on the night, we just had some players ranked above him, and we had to be true to our rankings. As much as it can appear a bit brutal on the outside, we just had a couple of players ranked above him, and we have to be true to our all the work that we've done through the year. We were thrilled that Biggie gets an opportunity. We wish him well. I think Richmond have got themselves a player there that has a lot of potential. We just preferred some others on the night.
So going back a year to a player like Jack Bytel, how much work goes into looking at a player that potentially was going to go a top 10, but got injured, slips back a fair way, obviously. How much free rein is there sort of going, okay, we'll look at a player like that, pick him up, work on him, bring him back in a couple of years' time, or potentially this year coming up. The benefits of doing that, and what's the risk that a club will take on a player like that? Yeah,
I think it's a really good question. We rated Jack very highly, not just as a player, but character-wise. He's got some real leadership potential as well. He's a very bubbly, energetic person, and so from a list point of view, we felt like he was a good fit for us, not just as a player, but also personality-wise. So we were well aware that when we picked Jack, based on the medical screening that our doctors had done on him, he wasn't going to play this year at all. But what gave us real confidence was that they said, we'll go in, we'll fix his back straight away, and he's going to be fine. So it's not something that should bother him long term. It's fixable. So let's be patient. This guy's a really talented player. Let's just go ahead and do it. Even though we'd already picked Max King as well, and there was obviously, it was unlikely that Max was going to get to the line last year. Although he ended up playing for some really good footy for Sandringham, and I'm sure he would have debuted if not for that ankle injury. But we just had to take a really patient approach, and as I mentioned before, we just pick the talent. Jack's flying at the moment. He looks $1 million. I watched some match sim on Monday, and he really stood out. He looks like the benefit of not playing last year and getting in the gym is that he looks like a third or fourth year player now. So I'd be pretty certain that Jack will play some AFL footy next year, which would be really exciting.
You mentioned earlier about having some whispers that there was another club or a couple of clubs that were interested in taking Ryan before we had our first pick. Do you guys play mind games with other clubs and kind of, maybe leak some information that you're looking at someone in particular so that someone else could get through? Or how do you kind of deal with that kind of perception from other clubs and fans that are wondering why he didn't take a certain player at this point?
Yeah, I don't think we really go out of our way to play mind games, but yeah, you can overthink things a fair bit. So yeah, we did get that information on Ryan, but there was no guarantee that was going to be right either. You get a lot of intel talking to player managers or just keeping your ear to the ground. It's amazing this year, because we didn't have an early pick, all the other clubs were pretty happy to talk to us. So we had a pretty good idea of what was going to happen sort of within the first 20, 25 picks. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely times where I've certainly spoken to players in the past, maybe some guys that are a bit more left field, and have spoken to them, and at the end of our chat or the interview that I've done with them said, hey, if anyone else talks to you, if another club talks to you, we were never here, sort of stuff. Because you do. That's what, all the clubs, when they talk to players, particularly those guys that are a little bit more left field, the last question we always ask is, who else have you spoken to? Because you want to get a bit of a feel for, can we let this guy get to the rookie draft, or do we need to jump on someone a little bit earlier if we really, really like someone? So, yeah, there are a little bit of mind games out there, but it's not something that we, I guess, put a lot of time and effort into.
Just the last one from me, in terms of your own, I guess, favourite story, a player that you watched for a long, long time that sort of landed at the club or even slipped through and landed somewhere else and is therefore a hard luck story. But is there one in particular that sort of stands out for you that you think, yeah, I'm really glad we plucked this kid? Yeah,
there's probably a couple. Like, I think I'm always a bit of a sucker for those stories where guys have persevered. It's not, it shouldn't be that hard to pick the guys at the top of the draft, but it's probably the guys that get out to rookie picks. They're the ones that I tend to like. So like a Rowan Marshall, he's missed out as an 18-year-old, as a 19-year-old, had to go play VFL footy. He wasn't getting a game for North Ballarat in the VFL. He was playing for Sebastopol. I think he won the Sebastopol's best and fairest, playing about 10 games in that year, and then the next year he did play for North Ballarat and he played at centre-half back predominantly. We never really thought he was going to be a centre-half back. We liked him forward and ruck. But there's a guy that's just not sooked up. He's just gone and gradually got better and better. And I guess that's what he's been doing now that he's landed with us. He just gradually getting better and better. So that's a really good story, I think, and someone that we really liked and has worked out well. And Cal Wilkie's probably another one. I think you'd all agree that Cal's just so reliable and dependable for a guy who's only had 1 year in the system. I know whenever I saw Cal near the ball last year, I just felt like he was going to do the right thing. And Cal's a bit like Rowan, he's had to really bide his time. Cal was not really a sexy player to watch in the Sandful. He was a little bit. He wasn't in the best condition. He sort of runs with a bit of a broom sort of up his back, and But what he does do is he's just incredibly smart. He gets to the right spots. He takes marks off the opposition. He helps set up your defence, and he never wastes the ball when he's got it. So, he's another one that really we think of pretty fondly in the recruiting team. That's for sure.
Yeah, we were talking before about how you get to know families and that sort of thing. You would get to know a few of them quite well that we don't actually draft. Keeping tabs with them and keeping in touch with them and finding out where they are, if they're at a club, they're not really getting games or things like that. Do you keep talking to them much and over the years, or
it's probably not one where we talk to the family directly. It might be through the manager more so. So, whenever we go into someone's home, we go in there trying to make a really good impression on them as well. Like, as much as a player, it's a job interview for the player that we're talking to. We're really mindful of the fact that we want to represent the St Kilda Footy Club in the best way possible, so that if one day down the track they are disgruntled at a club, they remember us fondly.
You re-establish that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's probably where Gags gets involved, and he'll probably talk to player managers and sort of manage that relationship through the agents. Yeah.
Mate, last one from me. It's a bit of a two-pronged question, but who makes the final call on draft night when you're sitting at the table and you've got to call out a name? And secondly, we've all kind of seen the videos of the new guys and seen kind of the the cookie cutter trade reports or draft reports and kind of the summaries on each of the guys. Is there one point that you could tell the listeners about each of the three guys that maybe they wouldn't have seen or read before?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of the decision, so Lib is the recruiting manager. So ultimately, yeah, if I really like a player, I need to convince Libba he's the one. So, so Libba is responsible for the national draft. But I guess we need to also present our draft order to list management committee as well, and it has to get ticked off sort of up the line prior to the draft. So there's a bit of a process there, but Libba's the man on draft night. And in terms of the draftees, I guess just some pretty basic info on the guys. I think Ryan lives about literally 2 minutes from the club. We, as a recruiting myself and Simon Guest, there's a smoothie bar not far from the club where we go 2 or 3 times a week, and we literally drove past Ryan's house every day for about 6 months this year. And every time we drove past, we said, "Oh, there's Ryan. We might pick him." But yeah, right. Look, Ryan's he's a smaller mid, but what we really like about Ryan is his ability to use his legs and get out of stoppage. He's got a good turn of speed. I'm not comparing him to Jack Stephen, but if you can imagine how you remember we had, Stuv would use his legs and get out the front of a stoppage. That's the sort of stuff that Ryan can do, and he also kicks really well on either foot. Leo Connolly is a Gippy boy. He's super talented. I think without putting too much pressure on him, although he likes to talk it up himself, I think he's probably, if not the best, maybe the second best kick in the draft this year. He's an exceptional kick of the footy. He's a right footer, but if you ask him, he says he's not sure which one's his better one. So he's just a really talented person. He's a good cricketer. He's taught himself how to play piano and guitar, and he sings, and he's just one of those annoying people that's really good at everything. I hate those guys because I'm not good at anything, other than recruiting, of course. And Jack Bell, Jack's going to be a long-term project for us. He's 202 centimetres, but we really wanted to pick somebody that could play forward and a bit of ruck as well this year. He's another one that lives just down the road. He's pretty much best mates with Max King, so Max was wrapped to get him through the door. What we really liked about Jack was his ability to win the ball in a lot of different ways. So he can take a big, spectacular mark. His forward craft's good, so he can get off someone on the lead. His ground ball is really, really good for his size. So he's a difficult matchup. He's just going to have to put on 10 to 15 kilos before he's going to be considered for the next level. But Jack knows that. He's patient. And we're looking at him with a very much a long-term view, but they've all hit the ground running. They've made a really good impression, and I think so far so good.
Chris, thank you for stopping by and giving us those insights into the inner workings of the recruiting department. Certainly been an exciting off-season. Enjoy a little break. I know you're still monitoring some of the little camps that the Metro and the Vic Country boys and those guys are doing over this summer period, but hopefully a bit of a break and come back refreshed, ready to cast the eye over thousands.
Yeah, thanks guys, anytime.
Chris Toce there. It's been a very historic couple of months for the St Kilda Football Club as we draw closer to the start of the AFLW season.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity, isn't it, to have the two programs training together. It's just an extension of the connection that the two groups are making. I've got a pretty good relationship with Rats, and I think that just really flows through down to the teams. And they say the teams are a mirror of yourselves, and I think it's really important that it's genuine, and today showing that it is. And Rats has already made really strong relationships with the girls last year through the VFL program. So it's just really important to have that connection, sense of belongingness, and just the value of having that between the two teams when it's authentic really speaks volumes.
That was Peter Searle speaking at St Kilda's training session on the weekend, part of their Christmas party, the weekend just gone, where the men and the women entered the field together and trained on the same park at Moorabbin. And post-Christmas, it's really going to happen very, very quickly. We're delighted to be joined by Jamie Cox, who was a very, very fine cricketer and now working in the football space with the Saints for about 5 years in regards to their future football programs. And Jamie, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Darren. pleasure.
How do you go balancing those loves, I guess? We know your cricket background as a fine first-class servant with Tasmania and now obviously working in football, so combining a couple of those passions. Am I correct in saying you're still doing a bit of cricket stuff?
Yeah, it's a delicate balance. I tend to spend a couple of days a fortnight down in Tassie, and it's really a labour of love, I guess. It's an association, a game that was great to me for a long time. So to be back involved there is really exciting. But it's equally exciting to be involved, from day one of this list build and this program build towards AFLW. The fact that it's now only a month away is really exciting.
G'day, Jamie. Thanks for joining us. Now, there's been, obviously, as we're saying, a lot of excitement about this club getting our women's team in, and a lot of reports there's a few players that were really excited to actually jump on board and just made it their thing to get to the club. Some of the players to look out for this season, who will we be looking at the most?
Mate, it's a really difficult one. I think and this might sound a bit cliche, but we've got a very even group. We went pretty hard during the expansion process to try and recruit good people and experienced AFLW players, and delighted that the likes of Nat Exxon, Kate McCarthy, Kat Phillips, Jess Segenary have decided to commit to the Saints from other states and other clubs interstate, as well as some of our returning Southern Saints from the previous year who'd been drafted. So with that core group, it was super. We added to that with our last year's VFL group, another dozen or so, and then went to the draft and picked up our bottom 7. And the talent we picked up at the draft, the likes of Georgia Patrikios, who we got with pick 3, we very openly said that if we had pick 1, we would have also taken Georgia. So we're delighted to have her. Young Tani White, who's a Queenslander, who's come down, is a natural footballer, coming back from an ACL 18 months ago, but is getting back to her best now. Nick Zenos is just an exciting little speed machine who played in Collingwood's premiership team last year. Rosie Dillon, one of the better players out of the VFLW competition last year from Hawthorn. So we actually feel like we're pretty well equipped. But if I gave you the name of a superstar, I'd probably say Patrikios will be a standout. I think she's just silk. She's got great class. She's just a very natural footballer who I think will excite a lot of Saints AFLW fans.
Jamie, Nick Splitter here. Thanks for coming on the show, mate. Just in terms of, obviously, the first year of the new Women's Footy Club, how important is kind of educating the girls on the history of the footy club, especially given they're going to be playing at Moorabbin at the spiritual home? How important is that history to, I guess, what is essentially a new franchise?
Yeah, it was a critical part, Nick, and it was actually a real key part of the pitch that we made to any girls looking to come to the Saints, that we've been a men's footy club for 140 years. We've been a female footy club for probably about 2.5. So, we don't pretend to get everything right, but we've learned a lot through having to sit and wait and watch others enter the AFLW. So, mate, the history of the Saints, it's almost tragic in many ways. The fact we've won one premiership, it's a story of almost, but it's a story of, great players, great times. There should no doubt have been more premierships come out of St Kilda, but it's been a key part of our growth to our girls, and I think someone said it off the start. A lot of the girls I know have committed to St Kilda, based on our short history in the women's game, but also the way we've gone about it, and we're really pleased with what we've managed to assemble.
Jamie Cox is the head of emerging football programs at the Saints. In regards to that educational aspect of it, conversely for the men as well, we saw in training the other day, both sides training together, running out onto the ground effectively together, which was a really terrific thing to see. But even educating them as well and saying that, look, we know that men's football, as you say, has been around for 150 years at St Kilda, but educating them on the importance of this new step, the diversity of it, and obviously the opportunities that opens up for them and even potentially their daughters going forward.
Yeah, to be fair, they've been terrific, our guys. they've been really curious and really open towards opening up the football club for the girls. And certainly under, Ratz's leadership and some of the senior players, they've been exceptional at welcoming the girls into the club. We did challenge the guys. We did basically say, hey, boys, it's been your footy club for a long time, but no longer. You're going to have to share. So the quicker you make it comfortable for these girls, the better we can enjoy what now feels like a proper football club, having been relocated back to Moorabbin for a couple of years. So they've been outstanding, very welcoming, very engaging with the girls, and I know the girls have appreciated certainly being welcomed into a great footy club like the Saints.
Now, the Southeast Corridor community have really got behind the team, it seems. There've been a lot of community involvement with some of the players and businesses and things around that. What have been some of the really good stories that come out of the local community getting behind the team and just the support that the new team is getting?
Yeah, well, we pitched hard. I think it might have also been mentioned off the bounce to be part of AFLW from the start, based on what we knew was just really strong support Bayside. And we've got probably, I don't know, I'm guessing at the moment, but probably half our squad have Bayside origins. So the girls that largely are in our group have come through our VFL program. A lot of them cross-coders, which is pretty consistent inside the girls' game. You get a lot of girls who are elite at another sport, but choose, now they can actually play football, choose to go and play a game that they've followed all their lives but just never been able to play. So so many of the girls have crossed over, and you're right. I mean, the local supports, particularly through the SMJFL, who share the facility with us here at Moorabbin, the support through the SMJFL in particular has been fantastic, and we hope to obviously turn that into a really strong breeding ground for our footy club for years to come.
Jamie, I'm going to put you a bit on the spot here, mate. I heard a whisper late last week that internally the club had a goal of about 1,000 memberships for the AFLW team, and that kind of as of earlier this week or late last week would well and truly pass that goal to the point where we would run out of membership packs and run out of cards. Can you confirm or deny this?
I can't confirm the running out of the cards piece, but I can confirm it's been wildly successful, and I know the number. The last I heard, it was over 1,400. So, and that was a little while ago. So, look, it has been popular, and there's genuine support and genuine love for what the girls are now able to do. I mean, to commit to an AFLW membership is an interesting thing because you don't really get a lot for it. The games are free to go. But what it is a show of faith in that this is a growing product and something that, I'm convinced, having been involved for a couple of years and haven't seen it grow, that in 5 years' time, this will be a seriously good product. It will actually have a generation then of young footballers and not just cross-coders coming in to play it. It'll be right up there with the best of female sports as a spectacle because it's already attracting some real high-end quality athletes, and we're about to get a whole group of high-end quality footballers who are also good athletes come into it. So, to be a member of, I think, the first thing of anything, great testament to our 1,400 odd Saints fans that have chosen to be part of that. Our club is ambitiously chasing 50,000 members across the football club this year, and certainly it's great that the AFL girls are playing their part in helping the club reach that number.
Saints fans, 1300 467 246. Get in touch and organise your membership for 2020, both of the men and the women. Jamie, Peter Searle, obviously a really important kind of figurehead for the women's program at our club. She was also, prior to that, a really important person in the football department for the men's program. How important was it for the club to have Peter move from the men's program to the women's program and to be involved at that level? Pete has been enormous. She's coached our VFL team for 2 years. She comes with
an enormous amount of experience. She will be the only female AFLW coach next year. That in itself is quite daunting, but something we and she are very proud of. Just to have Peter's experience in girls football and to understand the challenges our girls deal with to commit to football has been enormous. And I know a lot of the girls have connected very quickly with Peter for exactly that reason. But, you know, she's developed a great relationship with Rats and the other senior men's coaches as well, which enables this lovely transfer of intellectual property, I suppose, across both programs. So we are very lucky. We've managed to integrate both our programs pretty well, as well as what you can do. I mean, they need their own space, both the men and the women. But Peter's and Brett, for that matter, have both been a massive part of growing to where we are right now. It's just now the important bit. Time to play some games.
That's right, and the first of those games is Sunday the 9th of February. Once you get through Christmas, that's not all that far away. And it is at the spiritual heartland, Moorabbin, 3:10 against the Western Bulldogs, who are the inaugural premiership winners in this competition and have obviously been one of those founding teams in the AFLW, and one would expect with the Saints playing at Moorabbin quite a bit in the months of February and March that we're going to get quite impressive crowds and hopefully a really good standard of footy. Jamie, well done on all the work you're doing, and thanks for joining us.
Pleasure, Darren. Thanks, guys. It's exciting times.
Now wind back the clock now and have a chat to one of our legends.
Breen now is on the wing position on the outer side. Takes his kick. Not a bad one. In towards centre half forward once again. They're looking for Baldock all right. Knocked away by Gabelich. Comes down here to young Davis. Here's Baldock now, Mr. Magic. He goes away, but a free kick has been played to Alan Davis. Alan Davis takes his kick. Oh, it's a long one too. It's going to the goal square. They face a mark. Kevin Neal has put it through. Neal marked from behind and put it right through. And the first goal of the game came up after 3 minutes of play. The first goal to the Saints. There he is, Cowboy Neal from South Warrnambool.
Nice to catch up with Jamie Cox earlier about the developments of a few of the pathways within the St Kilda system, most notably the AFLW, which does kick off on the 9th of February with St Kilda taking on the Western Bulldogs. As we set off the top, unfortunately, the introduction for our next guest is one that is shared for too few. We certainly hope that others will earn this moniker one day, but St Kilda Premiership star Barry Breen joins us, the first Saint to play 300 games, also captained the club, and a rather fitting tribute or active support for a Premiership teammate in recent weeks. Kevin Cowboy Neal, recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and Barry Breen was able to trump up the support of a number of ex-Saints. I think there was up to 40 in attendance at a recent gathering to pay tribute and to pay their respects to a friend in Kevin Cowboy Neal, who is doing it tough at the moment. Barry, thanks for joining us.
Darren, Nick, Aaron, thanks for having me.
Now, I guess how that all sort of came about, and when you found out that Kevin was doing it reasonably tough, and I think it's fair to suggest that through the history of the football club, there would hardly be a more popular figure than Cowboy.
No, he's up there definitely in that echelon, and was a great player, great bloke, and we'd been mates till we played our first game together. So we've shared a fair bit together over the years, and it's funny how when you find out that Cowboy has Alzheimer's and you look back and I speak to Cowboy fairly regularly, and then just one phone call I think I remember most was I rang him. I said, "Mate, g'day, how you going?" And it took him 5 minutes, or he couldn't work out who it was, and I didn't realise, but later on that was the start of it, and that hence the lunch and trying to recognise Cowboy before he forgets all of us.
Now, myself, Darren and Nick are very much from a different generation. We grew up with seeing the end of Tony Lockett, Nick Revolt, and that sort of thing. Just in comparison, how big was he to the club compared to them back in the day?
Well, Nick and Hugger, I mean, they're icons of the game, and Cowdy was. I mean, he played his first game at 18 and he kicked 5 goals in the grand final in 66 and won goal kicking a couple of times, and then went down back and played played on Hudson and others, and he was just, in his time, for his size and how he played the game, was quite extraordinary. And he was quick for a big man. He was strong, great mark, good kick when he wasn't kicking for goal, and as most of them are today anyway. But he was an elite player. There's no doubt about that.
Barry, obviously, for us younger supporters of the club that weren't around to watch him play, we've all heard the name Cowboy Neal. We've all seen kind of highlights, and we know that he's a revered man in the history of the football club. But as someone who's known him really well for majority of both of your lives, yeah, exactly right. Can you tell us a bit about Cowboy Neal, Kevin Neal, the person rather than the player?
Look, he was a personality cowboy, and if in the old days when you'd go to Geelong or you had a long bus ride or whatever the case may be, he was a great storyteller. He remembered, he could tell jokes from Cardinia Park back to Moorabbin, and then sitting in the bus having a beer until midnight, he would continue those stories. He just had that ability to tell a joke, and someone tells me a joke, I forget it in 5 minutes. Cowboy, it never, ever forgot a story. But he was just a lovable, there was not a mean bone in his body off the field, if you know what I mean. And even on the field, there was not a mean bone in his body. He was talented. He whacked Hudson in the 71 grand final, but that was just a perfect moment. But he was a clean footballer, but you didn't want to get in his way. But as a person, he was first class. He was a basic bloke. He came from Warrnambool. He was an apprentice bootmaker in those days. Did he ever have a really, really high-powered job? No, but he worked for a lot of people, and all the people he worked for loved him. And he worked for me at the Sydney Swans when I was CEO there, and no one says a bad word about Cowboy, and that is that's a credit to his character and what sort of a person he is.
Can that be best summed up by the attendance of Peter Hudson at the event you organised a couple of weeks ago? Now, obviously, there are some great St Kilda names there. Peter Hudson, not a great St Kilda name, a champion of the game, but you talk about that grand final where Hudson comes in with 147 for the season and looks like he's going to hold the record himself for the most goals in a campaign. He still shares that record, but as you say, Cowboy, as folklore has it, stood up and said he can't kick goals if he's unconscious. He belts him, but the fact that Peter Hudson was still in attendance and they still obviously had that bond must say a lot about his character.
That's right. And when I spoke to Hutto and said, mate, will you come? And he said, he said, yes, I'd love to come, and if all my commitments enable me to. And he did. And he just had the best time while he was there. And Cowboy obviously recognised that Hutto was there. And Hutto, I mean, there's Hutto's in the top 10 of all time, and just a lovely person as well. And it was, again, the recognition of Cowboy's character that someone like Peter Hudson would come to an event like that.
Now, looking back at the final story, I do remember watching a little while ago when it came out after the 50 years. Do you recall Brian Sarakoski talking about how the whole day went? Players all did everything, and then he said that you basically took all the fanfare away by kicking a point. Has Cowboy ever mentioned the fact that, yes, he did kick 5 goals and he's trying to work out why maybe he isn't at the front of it all? Well,
I mean, that's Sarah, and Sarah and I, we're good mates and we speak a lot, and I was over there earlier in the year. Sarah played a great game in the back pocket. Cowboy played a great game at full forward and kicked 5 goals. I played 5. I kicked 5 points. So without any of those contributions, we don't win the game. But it does. I mean, they must be very sick of just when a grand final is mentioned, I get the accolade. Yep. But that's footy, but we all recognise everybody played a very important part in making that game a success for us. And it doesn't matter, it was Jimmy Reid, Jeff Moran, John Bingley. John Bingley did a great job. Roger Head did a great job in the back pocket. We all contributed something on the day, and that's the most important thing.
Talking about that game, obviously, it was a long time ago. How does having the most famous moment in the football club's history sit with you? 50 odd years later. I mean, all things going well. 8 or 9 years ago, there could have been a new greatest memory when Brendan Goddard took that mark and kicked the goal.
Correct.
Held on for 90 more seconds. That probably takes the mantle. But how does that sit with you? 53 years later.
Look, I'm grateful. It's too long, but it's look. Some people say to me, Breen, if you hadn't kicked that point, you would just been a bricky's label or something like that. To me, I didn't complete university, but my football career was my university degree, and it taught me a lot, being around a whole bunch of people that had all sorts of skills. So I'm very grateful for the fact that it was me, and I don't dwell on it, but as time goes by, it's bigger than Ben Hur or bigger than Texas, and we just want the next one to happen, and then it gets pushed into the background a little bit. But it's just one of the iconic moments of Australian football, and for me, I'm extremely grateful that it was me, and I hope I'm humble enough about it to appreciate it, acknowledge my teammates, and I think I do that.
A final one from me, and I guess it's a two-parter. You spoke about Cowboys stories, and I've heard a few regalings that he was still a bit cheeky on that particular day, saying he had no recollection of belting Hudson, but we obviously knew that he did have a memory of that. But how often? So how was he on the day in terms of obviously knowing that everyone was there, George Young from WA and Carl Dittrich and all of these people? And I guess the second part, now that Darryl Baldock and Alan Jeans are no longer with us, and it's getting harder and harder. For you premiership players, how frequently do you see each other?
Well, not a lot, because we're scattered all over the countryside, as you just said, Perth, South Australia, Queensland, New South Wales, wherever. Cowdy was okay on the day, and I made sure that he was, because everybody who came, I said, Cowdy, do you know who that is? And somebody didn't, because we've all changed. There was a lot of guys there that weren't well-known names in terms of a lot of time at St Kilda, but like Juddy came, and Juddy played alongside Cowboy in the grand final, and a lot of blokes wouldn't recognise Juddy today. But I said, mate, that's Juddy. I said, who's that? He said, no, I've told him. And I said to him a number of times, I said, do you know why we're here, mate? No, we don't. I don't know. I said, we're all here because of you. And I said that a number of times to him, and then when I acknowledged everybody that came and made the effort to get there, I said, Cowdy, when he's sitting there with Georgie, I said, mate, you know why we're all here? No. I said, we're all here for you. And that was an emotional time of the day. And then Georgie was emotional about it. She couldn't say. I said, Georgie, you want to say something? She couldn't. And Cowdy was very emotional about it as well. But he knew why we were there in the end. And I think that was the most important thing.
Now, stepping away from the obvious, what is the one thing that sticks out to you from your career, your time at the Saints, on field, off field? Obviously, we know what the one big thing would be, but what is something else that's just not obvious to anyone else that you just remember vividly?
Oh, look, that's a hard question. I had 18 years there. Lots of highs, lots of lows. The highs always outlast the lows. And some players who, at St Kilda or other clubs, that have a low or get something happens to them and they get annoyed or dirty on the club and don't come back. There's lots of reasons why I should be dirty on the club. Left a lot of money there in 1982, $65,000. But I would never ever get dirty on the St Kilda Football Club. You may have a point about certain individuals, but you never ever take it out on the football club, because the football club is the supporters and all the people that contribute over many, many years of the history of the St Kilda Football Club. You cannot say, I am not going back to that place, or I've wiped them, because you would be slapping the face of all those people that have followed that football club for 150 years, and I'd never do that. And that's probably the highlight. Just that I'm part of the structure of the footy club, part of the history of the club. I really treasure that, and treasure the people that I've met along the journey. And that's probably the best thing. All the people you meet, your teammates, the highs and lows, forget grand finals or finals or 300 games or club records, captain, whatever that may be, Hall of Fame. It doesn't matter. It's the people that you meet and that you retain their friendship over 50 years. It's the best part of any football club.
Barry, you kind of touched a bit on it. I think fans and supporters and members are the same. You know, you look back at the history of our football club, and it's very much a tragic history. Over 150 years, and often, fans and supporters will get down on the club, and there are threats made. I'm tearing up my membership. I'm never coming back. I'm done with this footy club, etc. But we all do. We all come back the next year, and we all love the club. And what is it from your perspective, from an ex-player, a premiership player, a 300 gamer, former captain? What is it about our football club that has this effect on supporters and we bleed red, white and black. What is it about our footy club that's so special? Well,
I've barracked to St Kilda since I was 4 years of age. My dad came from Ireland. He took me to the Junction Oval when I was 3 or 4. I spent all that time in the 50s following St Kilda when they didn't win a game. When I was the only guy at school, kid at school who barracked for St Kilda, and you got ridiculed for it. You have to have a certain strength of character to follow St Kilda through the highs and the lows. As you said, there have been lots of tragedies and lots of bad decisions made in my time and certainly prior to my time and after my time. But the thing is now, I think they're on the right track, and the administration and what they're trying to achieve, Moorabbin and all that sort of thing, is setting the club up for a good future. We had a good time. We lost the plot. We got it back. We lost it again. But I think now we are heading towards a better future. But it's really the tragedies of the footy club that makes St Kilda supporters, and they always live in hope. And that's what they've done for 150 years. We're waiting for that next premiership. We should have won 2 or 3 after 66. We didn't for a whole bunch of reasons. It's just St Kilda seems to attract tragedy. I don't know. I hope it goes away, but that's part of the character of the footy club, which makes it unique. And people are just waiting for that moment, and hopefully it'll be very soon.
Hopefully, indeed. Barry, thank you for giving us some time this evening. We really appreciate your time. Well done on all you've done for Cowboy, and most importantly, all you've done for the club.
Thanks very much, mate. Good to talk.
Well, that was Barry Breen, 1966 Premiership star, but a lot more than that, as we said, club captain and 300 games, the first Saint to do so, and it took until Stuart Lowe reached that mark, which would have been about 30 years later, to find another St Kilda player to reach 300 AFL games. He was a superstar, Barry Breen. His 1971 grand final was outstanding. Unfortunately, it ended in defeat for the Saints, but he was a gun at centre-half forward on that particular day. Well, that's it for us for the year. To both of you guys, Merry Christmas, and we look forward to kicking it off pretty soon again in the new year, actually, because we're only about 5 weeks away from a St Kilda team playing a game, which is the AFLW girls at Moorabbin against the Bulldogs. So we'll be bringing you programs all through that as well. So enjoy the remainder of 2019.
Yeah, you too. It's gonna be good to have a bit of a rest, but looking forward to a new season. It's exciting on a number of levels.
Yep. Cheers, boys, and go Saints 2020.